Bitter debate over Terri Schiavo is still raging this morning, despite the autopsy report that backs her husband's views. ABC's Jeffrey Kaufman has details.
Moaning and groaning.
The autopsy leaves no room for doubt. Terri Schiavo's brain was severely damaged.
This damage was irreversible, and no amount of therapy or treatment would have regenerated the massive loss of neurons.
The normal weight of the brain for a woman her age, 12 to 1,300 grams. Schiavo's weighed half that. The autopsy also found there was no evidence of neglect or abuse, and it concluded she did not starve to death as her family contended. She died of dehydration. Schiavo's husband and her family fought bitterly for a decade over the true nature of her condition. Her parents and their supporters insisted she could recognize people. Not possible, say the medical examiners.
Mrs. Schiavo had what's called cortical blindness. She was blind, could not see.
The overwhelming scientific evidence was not enough to persuade Terri Schiavo's family. Her brother spoke on Hannity and Combs.
The medical examiner said it's a clinical diagnosis, and I still stand by what I said, that we did not believe Terri's in PVS. There were many doctors that did not believe she was in PVS.
Schiavo's parents and their supporters continue to insist that whatever her state, she should have been allowed to live. For Good Morning America, Jeffrey Kaufman, ABC News, Miami.
And our medical editor, Dr. Tim Johnson, joins us in just a moment with a closer look at Schiavo's autopsy report.
More now on the surprising new details of the Terri Schiavo autopsy. There were so many questions about her condition. Now we finally have some answers this morning, and ABC medical editor Dr. Tim Johnson is here to explain what the report says. You've read it was pretty lengthy, a 38-page report.
Thorough.
We heard in Jeffrey Kaufman's report in the newscast that it was massive, irreversible brain damage, and that Terri's brain was about half the size what it should have been for a woman of her age, yet she seemed so aware to many, Tim.
Well, if we can take a look at a model of the brain, I'll explain how that can happen. She suffered terrible damage to that big top part of the brain where all the folds are there, all the curlicues. That's where the thinking, feeling parts of our cognition go on. That little stalk down at the bottom is the brain stem, and that's where the vital functions go on. Breathing, heart rate, reflexes that might make her head move around, make it look like she's looking, and that was not damaged. So that's how she could look like something was happening when, in fact, the thinking part of her brain was virtually gone.
Also, many of us saw the fact that in the home video, it seemed like she was following a balloon, yet we find now that the doctor in the report said that she was blind. Why did they not know that before?
Well, because they couldn't examine the brain per se until autopsy. She was brain blind, if I may use that phrase. In other words, her eyes may have been working, she may have been taking in light, but when those nerve signals got to the visual centers in the brain, they were gone, so they couldn't interpret it. So she really had no actual vision. She didn't know what she might be seeing with light waves. So for practical purposes, she was brain blind.
Terri's family contends she was starved to death, but the report says it was dehydration.
Yes, when you stop food and fluid support, as happened when they took out the feeding tube, it takes typically a week or two to die of dehydration. Many more weeks, even months, to die of starvation. So in fact, she did die of dehydration, meaning that the death would be peaceful as compared to a starvation death.
That's good to hear. As you know, just the debate that raged on for so long over this, and what can we take away? What are the lessons that we can learn after this report?
Well, I feel that in this case, where they had very competent medical evaluation, that we have to trust the medical expertise that was produced by the court system throughout her case. And I think families need to be able to rely on that and take comfort in the fact that the best was brought to bear. And politicians should just stay out of it in terms of their medical opinions. They have a right, obviously, to their personal opinions about the ethics involved. They should speak out in that way. But when they start offering medical opinions from a distance, even Dr. Frist, I was disappointed in him for doing that. He should have known better. But all of them, that was a mistake, and they set a bad example, I think, in doing that.
All right. I appreciate that, Dr. Tim.